Welcome to the All In Community webinar, Mentoring Incarcerated Members, Families, and Neighbors. Thank you to our participants for logging in and giving your time and attention to this important area of ministry. Today, we are absolutely blessed to have special presenter Mr. Gary Croft from the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. Gary serves the department as the Faith-Based Initiatives Coordinator for the Office of Reentry, and he has served the department in various positions over the years. He is one of the most highly decorated public servants in the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, including recently being named Employee of the Year. As the Faith-Based Initiatives Coordinator, Gary works with faith organizations and volunteers to engage with prison residents in ways that lead to life change. He is the architect of and oversees the department's faith-based mentoring program called Life Builders. Thank you so much, Gary, for being with us today, and now I turn the webinar over to you.
Well, thanks, Reba, and good morning, brothers and sisters. What a wonderful introduction that I don't feel that I actually really deserve, but I appreciate it nonetheless. As Reba indicated in her introduction, I'm the Faith-Based Reentry Coordinator here for ODRC. I'm located in the Office of Reentry and Religious Services. I work directly under Dr. Mike Davis, who oversees both of those areas. What I do is Faith-Based Reentry Coordinator. Of course, Reba, talked briefly about it, but I work with the faith community around the state to bring those resources that the faith community brings to reentry specifically, to make sure that those resources get to our men and women in our prisons as they transition back out to society. And so that's what I do from a broad perspective. What brings us here today is just talk about faith-based mentoring in general, which in our Life Builders program specifically that I'll get into much later, which is one of the vehicles that we work with the faith community in, is the faith-based mentoring piece. And so we'll talk some about that. But let's get right into the presentation. Okay. So why is faith-based mentoring important? Obviously prisons is a modern day mission field, and currently we have 49,534 men and women in 27 prisons in Ohio. And just from a national standpoint, an estimated 6,613,000 plus persons were under the supervision of U.S. adult correctional systems on December 31st, 2016. The adult correctional population consists of persons held in prisons and jails and persons on probation and parole. So chances are that you either know someone from your community that is incarcerated in one of Ohio's prisons, or you're aware of someone in your church or community that has someone that they care about that is one of our 49,000 plus residents. Actually, I don't think most people really realize how large Ohio's prison population actually is, and how many institutions that we actually house men and women in, 27. So our former director, Gary Moore, set faith-based mentoring as a priority for our agency 5 years ago. And he tasked me with developing and overseeing this initiative. And Director Moore believed that every resident housed in our prison should have a mentor, whether he or she was serving a life sentence or being released back to the community relatively soon. So faith-based mentoring promotes positive values and hope-filled perspectives and facilitates a better way of thinking and behaving. Mentoring is a process of a more experienced person helping a less experienced person grow and develop. So in prison, religious practice, brings comfort to our residents, many of our residents. Participation in religious activities are important in two ways. First, they represent important rituals that are affiliated to the resident's specific religion, taking communion, meditating, praying, reading biblical texts, etc. By engaging in these activities, residents are able to signal to others and identify themselves as being part of a group with a shared set of values, beliefs, and practices. And then secondly, the process of engaging in the religious activity brings psychological comfort to our residents, including the desire to disclose. We're safe to do so, obviously, inside a prison, and an opportunity to present themselves with integrity and honesty, and that's important for our residents. ODRC decided to engage the faith community in our mentoring initiatives because first and foremost, we want to connect our inmates with pro-social people who are for the right things. Also, when you look at who comes into our prisons from a volunteer perspective, volunteers from the faith community are our largest group of volunteers. So not only are they plentiful, but they view this as a ministry opportunity for them to engage in. So from a biblical standpoint, the Bible offers a reason for why mentoring the incarcerated is so important. And this is a pretty familiar passage for a lot of you, I'm sure. It's Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. And I just wanted to share the scripture with you. The Lord directed me to this scripture when Director Moore asked me to put together ODRC's faith-based mentoring initiative. Obviously, you won't see it on any of our ODRC literature, but I wanted to share this with you since we're all believers for the purpose of this webinar. And incarceration is perhaps the lowest point in one's life, and it's very difficult to recover from a period of incarceration without a whole lot of support. And the faith community has to answer God's call to help these brothers and sisters out of the pit that they now find themselves in. So faith-based mentor helps men and women who are incarcerated several things, overcome their past disadvantages or negative life patterns. Many of our residents don't know anything about too much of anything but the streets and the behavior necessary for street survival. And they only know who they know. And that's no different from any of us. We only know who we know. But they only know who they know. And faith-based mentors model a different way of thinking, behaving, and living. Also discover God's love and develop and mature spiritually. I think that many people who have never been inside one of our prisons would be very surprised at how God is already moving in the lives of many of our residents. We have programs, faith-based programs like Kairos and some others that come in and really minister to large groups of men and women inside of our prisons, and they do it with excellence at a very high level. But all of them still need someone to walk with them as they mature in the Lord. And faith-based mentors are uniquely equipped to fulfill this particular need. And then find self-esteem and worth practically as a child of God. The incarceration experience is obviously very dehumanizing. One comes to prison and loses his or her identity. In prison, their inmate number is just as important as their name for the purpose of identification. And that's why, often you may talk to some of our ex-residents, and they may have been out for several years, but if asked, most of them can probably actually recite their inmate number, because that's what in prison, that's how they are identified for the most part. And so that makes it a very dehumanizing experience. And so that's why mentoring helps them in this particular instance. Also feel a sense of hope and gain a sense of purpose for their life. There's nothing more tragic and sometimes dangerous than a resident in one of our prisons that has lost all sense of hope. And so faith-based mentors encourage residents to stay hopeful. So many residents just need someone to personally connect with them and tell them that they believe them and look them in the eye and tell them that they're going to make it. And then develop self-control and overcome addictions. Research suggests that individuals with higher levels of religious support report significantly lower levels of substance abuse. So due to this current opioid crisis in Ohio, our prisons are literally filled with drug and alcohol addicted men and women whose offense behavior was directly connected to their addiction. In fact, if they don't address their addiction, they'll be in and out of our prisons for the rest of their lives, unfortunately. Many residents will tell you that they don't know anyone outside, who does not use drugs, including their family members in a lot of cases. Transition from negative to positive relationships. Our residents only know who they know, as I said before, and we only know who we know. So why should we expect them to be any different? Faith-based mentoring directly exposes them to healthy relationships that they would not have otherwise had the benefit of. And then also accept responsibility for their own choices and consequences. Just really coming to grips with what actually brought them to prison. Mentors also develop and sustain productive lives, employment, etc. So mentors have the ability to expose our residents to people and resources within the mentor's personal network that could be a blessing to them. And that's what, when you connect a man or woman once they're released from one of our prisons, when you connect them to a congregation, all of those resources, a mentor within that congregation, all of the resources that the mentor has access to, he can now basically share those resources and point the mentee into the direction of those resources within that congregation, and then discover the blessing of helping others along the same journey. Many restored citizens who have been mentored often become mentors themselves because they know the impact the experience has had on their lives, and they want to pay it forward. The restored citizens actually make some of the best mentors because of their shared experiences with the residents. And quite a few of our Life Builders faith-based mentoring program mentors, volunteer mentors, are restored citizens. And it's a powerful dynamic just watching, some of the groups when they're in session, and just listening to some of our restored citizens talk about their experiences and their successes, and able to share and impart that and speak into the lives of their mentees. It's just been a blessing to watch and to be a part of. So let's talk a little bit about qualities and characteristics of a good mentor. Unfortunately, those who are incarcerated find themselves a lot more familiar with failure than success. It's common for them to view even a small setback as a total failure. Effective faith-based mentors know that change takes time, and they focus on a mentee's long-term potential. Faith-based mentors also help mentees stay focused, grounded, and always moving forward, and that's important. One of the most important things a mentor does for a mentee is to provide a model of godly behaviors and attitudes. And mentoring is an important opportunity for growth and development for both the mentor and the mentee as their relationship with each other and their fellowship with Christ grows. So effective mentors have these common characteristics. They feel God is calling them to a mentoring ministry. So, mentoring is above and beyond traditional prison ministry that might involve conducting Bible study, for instance, or Kairos, or some of those other great opportunities. Mentoring consists of intentionally establishing a relationship, and obviously requires a great deal of commitment and a deeper commitment. Mentors have the ability to look past circumstances in the mentee's life and find positive potential that can be developed. Many residents have grown up in an environment where they're put down regularly, constantly, and at times violently. They carry with them a deep sense of shame, believing that they are mistakes rather than people who make mistakes. In prison, this searing pain of toxic shame is really reinforced. Society, many residents feel, has incarcerated them because they are mistakes. Many residents who participate in a faith-based program and are looking for something, anything, that will provide them with some hope in a hopeless place. Yet the shame that residents carry often prevents them from integrating scripture knowledge with their life walk. And this is where mentoring can change mentees' lives. Through mentoring, mentees find a safe place where they can begin to release that shame that hindered their growth and maturity for most of their lives. Mentors also have a discernment and are not easily manipulated. Mentors have to be empathetic, but not gullible. They have to ultimately be able to discern between those who are just saying what they want to hear and those who are truly repentant and seeking God's grace in their life. Of course, mentors are able to speak the truth in love, They possess an attitude of tolerance and patience, and understanding that the growth process takes time, and trusting God for transformation of the mentee's life. All too often, it's possible to enter into a relationship with the purpose of, quote, fixing someone or setting them straight. And such relationships end up being damaging rather than enriching. Mentors also have the ability to empathize with the many failures that mentee has experienced and focus on being an encourager rather than a fault finder. Also, mentors possess the insight and wisdom to help the mentees maintain a balanced lifestyle. Mentors should not have personal problems that might affect the mentoring relationship. So the mentor sets an example. This is another great characteristic of a mentor. People are often more influenced by what we do than by what we say, and we all know that. And we're called to be witnesses for Christ. Mentors must be continually aware that we are being watched by everyone around us, and most importantly, by God. When visiting your mentee, don't start talking badly about the correctional staff that made you wait 10 minutes to get in the visiting room. And don't talk about ways that you may have skirted a bad situation by not complying with the letter of the spirit of the law, within your own life at any given time. There should always be consistency of character that is seen by everyone as you're relating to your mentee. And then mentors have the ability and willingness to share personal experiences that may encourage the mentee. The mentor is entering into a personal relationship with the mentee. Personal means that we must take time to get to know the person. We must find out about them, and this takes time and effort. And it also involves telling someone about ourselves and allowing them to get to know us. If you relate back, to the Bible, when Jesus was choosing his apostles, he called them individually by name and entered into a very special relationship with them. He knew each of them, and they knew him. These men had a different relationship with Jesus than other people had with him. Mentors also had the ability to direct the mentee to specific Bible passages and Christian literature that will help him or her become grounded in their faith. Mentors must have the ability to rightly divide the word of God. They must regularly read the Bible, study it, and put diligent effort into understanding it. And then mentors have to have strong connections to the local church and a large network of resources within the community that help the mentee with transitional needs. And all of this, always remembering that the transformation is the work of God and not the faith-based mentor. So, mentoring those people that you know. Does anyone in your congregation or community have a family member or friend who needs, in prison, who needs encouragement and mentoring? Well, the first thing you obviously would want to do is you want to identify where they're incarcerated and their inmate number. And so I've provided a link here, a resource for you. So you go to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections website, and you can see the link there, and select inmate search. And so this feature will allow you to locate any resident currently incarcerated at an ODRC institution. And you also be able to see a picture, an actual picture of the resident, which might be helpful if you haven't seen him or her in a long time. Secondly, another starting point is to write letters to let them know that you care. A resident can receive letters from anyone. Letters are treasured by people in prison, and some receive none. One of the great advantages of the letters is that they can be read again and again. So in your letters, introduce yourself and let them know that you and there are those, including other than you, who care about them, and that you're all praying for them. And just encourage them. And writing is an easy and practical way to mentor when your person is incarcerated and far from home. I recall over my years of working in the prisons as deputy warden and a warden, and as you go through the housing units, I would go through the housing units around after in the evening after the evening count, and that's when the officers distribute the mail to the inmates, mail call, and you would be surprised how few inmates actually receive anything throughout their whole incarceration. So you may have a cell block of 300 men, and only 10 men got a letter that particular day on any given day, if that. So writing is really important, and letters mean a whole lot. Here's some rules to be mindful of when sending letters to residents. And I'll just kind of go through these. These are outlined in our policy. So ODRC residents may receive the following in a first-class letter. They can receive 5 photographs, no Polaroid, and the dimensions are 5 by 7. They can receive newspaper clippings, pamphlets or brochures, up to 5, and blank stationery or copy material, 5 pages and no longer than 8.5 by 11. Greeting cards must be single fold only. Multi-fold, musical, those pop-out cards, they're prohibited. And postage stamps, laminated stickers, etc. are also prohibited. So you can also email residents through JPay. JPay's correctional email service is faster than regular mail, with inmates usually receiving emails within 48 hours. Each email requires a stamp, often available at more affordable rates than traditional postage, and they can be purchased online and at a JPay kiosk in a correctional facility. So for more information on JPay email, you can go directly to this link, which is the JPay company website, and get more information on the email. That's all done through JPay and through their company at that link. And I want to take a second to just talk really briefly about that if you're already an approved ODRC volunteer at an institution, you're prohibited from writing or visiting residents without the express authorization of the warden. And if you ever have any questions, if you're an approved volunteer, you ever have any questions regarding this issue, immediately contact the volunteer coordinator at that institution where you are volunteering. And the reason I mention this is I realize some of you may already be approved volunteers inside of our prisons, be it through Kairos or some other ministering opportunity. And I want to make sure you don't unintentionally jeopardize your approved volunteer status by actually writing an inmate without permission. So be mindful of that, please. So mentoring those encourage them as you're writing letters to them. Also encourage them to address their programming need. As you encourage them, you need to encourage them to get involved in the programming offered at the institution where they're housed. So you can also go to our Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction website, and then you can select institution information. And this feature will allow you to select the institution where the resident is incarcerated. You'll also be able to see the information on all the programming that is offered to residents at that particular institution. So this tool will equip you to specifically encourage the resident to take advantage of those opportunities readily available to prepare them for release. So as you're communicating back and forth with him or her, and you go to the website and you see that they offer some AA meetings or a welding class or whatever their needs are that have been communicated to you through your correspondence. Use that information to just encourage them. Hey, they've got AA meetings there. They've got the Oasis recovery program there at that prison where you're at. Have you thought about getting involved in that? And if you haven't, I just encourage you to get involved in it, and just continue to encourage them and push them towards taking advantage of those things that are already offered at the prison to help them as they during their incarceration and as they transition back home. Also encourage spiritual growth and development. As you encourage the resident, also encourage them to get involved in the spiritual programming offered at the institution where they're housed. So under the institution information tab is the name of the institution's chaplain. So feel free to call and email your person's chaplain and introduce yourself and find out what type of faith-based programs are offered. And even ask, that the chaplain that your person be reached out to by religious services staff. So that there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just interacting directly with the chaplain, saying, "Hey, chaplain, this gentleman or this lady or lady or gentleman that I've been corresponding with and encouraging. I really want to see them get involved in some things down at the chapel. They have a desire, but I'm not so sure that they know what's going on down at the chapel. Would you be willing to kind of reach out to them and invite them down to the chapel? And chaplains would be more than happy to do that. Build trust. Building trust with the mentee is critical. It's absolutely critical. Trust encourages truthfulness. If a person fears that revealing past failures will provoke condemnation, he or she will be prone to hide things, as we all are. On the other hand, if a person trusts he or she will be accepted no matter what, it's much easier to reveal long-standing struggles and seek help. So as a mentor, you'll need to earn your mentee's trust over time. Those who have been incarcerated often enter relationships with their guard up. And this caution often comes from painful past experiences in which they were belittled, abused, or neglected, abandoned by people they trusted and cared about, raised in emotionally and physically unpredictable and volatile environments, or betrayed or victimized in some other way. Because trusting others brought pain in the past, mentees may be hesitant to allow themselves to become vulnerable again. And you can expect them to keep their guard up until they're pretty certain that you're different from those who previously hurt them. Accountability. Work towards accountability. In our culture, we have come to accept the concept of minding one's own business. You know, we can in many cases we could be living next door to somebody for a couple of years and not really know who they are, and really have communicated with them. That's just kind of inherent to our culture nowadays. Accountability is a very sensitive area when working with residents and ex-residents. Most of them have lived their entire lives with the attitude, I don't need anyone telling me what to do or how to live. I'm not a child. Many of them have a problem with authority figures. Not surprising. In a mentoring relationship, accountability must be reciprocal. Mentors are called to keep mentees accountable, but they must also be accountable to their mentees. The key to accountability is the quality of your relationship. If a mentee truly believes you care, they will allow you to keep them accountable because you have their best interests at heart. If you try to keep mentees accountable before you build a solid relationship, they may become defensive and resent you for confronting them. That said, accountability cannot be forced. A relationship with a mentee can be quickly shredded by a demand for some sort of confession or demand for an apology. The mentor needs to stand strong in their mercy and forgiveness, make no demands, and let the mentee acknowledgement arise in its own time. So visiting. As your relationship develops through your written correspondence and eventually upon mutual desire, you may want to begin visiting the resident to encourage them in person. But always allow the relationship to grow before suggesting a visit. And it's important to let the resident dictate the pace at which the relationship develops. Residents can only have 2 friends on their visiting list at any given time, and this requires them to prioritize friend relationships for the purpose of visitation. At the point in time where there's mutual agreement, when you're being added to the resident's visiting list, you'll need to go through the visitation application approval process. So again, you go to Ohio Department of Rehabilitation website at this link. And this feature will allow you to learn more about visiting opportunities and the process itself. Another helpful link is this ODRC government fact visiting. This link provides facts on the ODRC's visiting process, bullet pointed and real easy to follow, real easy to understand. So now you're visiting and you're spending time with your mentee. Here's some things to just be aware of, be conscious of. First of all, acknowledge human dignity. Always view them as men and women who are someone's sons and daughters, where they may have spouses and children. Look beyond where they are now and see what they could be. See their God-given potential. Residents' concerns and fears are rarely expressed in prison, both because because they're likely to be rebuffed or ignored, and because expressing them may be a sign of weakness in prison. Your visit can counter this brutal darkness with light. It can serve to remind residents of their humanity, and that's very important. You can provide what the resident has been deprived of, compassionate listening. Also, be a friend. The ultimate goal should be to befriend them and to show them that God has not forgotten them. Point them to a new or deeper relationship with the Lord. Caring for the downtrodden with a heart of mercy and grace is desperately needed inside our prisons. Without prying, give them an opportunity to talk about their day-to-day life in prison, their worries and their needs and their concerns and fears. Also talk about their families. Show concern for their families. If they have children, ask them about their children. It makes residents love to talk about their kids, like we love to talk about our kids. They also love to hear funny, lighthearted stories about your kids. Be careful not to disclose too much personal family information. And be careful not to overdo your stories of your happy family memories. They're painfully aware that they're missing out on making memories with their own families. Be genuine. Our residents know when you're fake and when people are pretending. So just be real. Residents are generally pretty good at spotting fakes. And that comes from many of their street sense and their instincts coming and surviving in the streets. What you are and how you relate may mean more than what you say. Every visit has some sort of tension, especially the first ones. Tension can also be high if you do not have a relationship with the resident prior to their incarceration. So if you're visiting the son of a friend in your congregation, for example, such a visit is quite different from a visit from their parents or a sibling. The fact that you are there is so positive that any tension will likely diminish throughout very early in your visit. By showing up, you've already broken through and opened the door to healing. Also encourage forgiveness. We've got topics such as forgiveness into your conversations and try to help them see life from another point of view. Considering sharing how you forgave someone and how this can lead to an improved relationship. Mentors help inmates heal themselves. Teach them how to forgive. Also, realizing forgiveness is a decision to treat other persons like something never happened while still holding them accountable for their actions. Accountability is to ensure that it does not happen again, and they need to understand that. Forgiving themselves requires that they admit their wrongs to people involved and accept the consequences of their own behavior. They pay their debts to their family, their victims, and society by doing their time, changing their lifestyle, and making any needed restitution. Then help them to accept the fact that they don't have a clean slate. Show them how to stop punishing themselves and start living the rest of their lives as if their moral failures never happened. Residents must also understand that this may be hard to do, and it becomes especially hard when they face unforgiving people who are constantly reminding them of their past failures. Also, just be yourself. You can have a huge impact on our residents by simply striking up a simple conversation, lending an understanding ear, and developing compassion. So pastoral visits, a word to any pastors that may be tuned in. Inmates may have one person on their visiting list as their clergy of record. Clergy of record identified by the resident as their current outside clergy member. Clergy must complete a visiting application and send it in on a letterhead stating that they're the clergy of record and provide proof of professional certification. Also, associate or staff pastors may visit in the place of the clergy of record with proper application and professional verifications. And so the institutional chaplains at each prison are responsible for verifying all of those professional certifications prior to the pastor being listed on the residents visiting list. And just a word for family in reference to family visits. So the inmates visiting list may include up to 15 visitors, regardless of relationship, excluding any listed attorney of record, clergy of record, or children under the age of 18 years old. I should also note that all visitors under 18 years of age must be related to the resident being visited or accompanied by an approved visitor who is the child's parent or legal guardian. Visitors are not permitted to deliver packages, correspondence, money, or printed materials directly to our residents. All such items must be processed through the U.S. mail. And only approved visitors may deposit funds to a resident's account by utilizing the JPay system, kiosk, or online. Visitation applications may be denied if the visitor was a victim or personal injury or harm of the mentee's, of the resident's crime, either under current incarceration or any previous incarceration. Lastly, from a family perspective, encourage the resident to participate in family reunification events offered at their institution. So, Angel Tree, often the prison will offer marriage conferences and just spend days with your Father's Day, spend days with your children. Encourage your resident to become involved in those family reunification events at that particular prison whenever they're offered. So now we kind of talk about Life Builders, which is ODRC's faith-based mentoring program. And Life Builders is a program where each institution partners with a faith-based organization that has volunteers connected to that organization that have a heart to mentor our residents. Life Builders is a one-on-one, same-gender relationship that focuses on rehabilitative needs of the mentored offender, fosters caring and support, encourages personal development, and assists in personal visioning and assist in the transition to the community by developing active community partnerships. With the ODRC Life Builders faith-based mentoring program, we are intentionally helping our residents establish positive relationships with a mentor from the faith community while they're in prison, with the hope that that relationship continues well after they're released. So the program lasts for 6 months. That's the commitment for the mentors and the mentees. We're looking for 6 to 10 mentors to come in as a group. They meet with the mentees as a group 2 times per month over that 6-month program period. And each session lasts approximately 90 minutes to 2 hours, and everything happens in the same room. So residents are welcome to participate in the program regardless of their faith. Residents must also have at least 1 year remaining on their sentence to be considered for participation in Life Builders program. And the only reason we require them to have 1 year left on their sentence because it's a 6-month long program, and we don't want them to go home before the program ends, after we've invested that much time training, recruiting the volunteers, the volunteer mentors. For the first 30 minutes, the way the sessions look, for the first 30 minutes of the session, the faith-based organization is free to share whatever it is they want to share. And this is all in a group setting, a community setting. So what a lot of the Life Builders faith-based mentoring groups do is this gives them an opportunity to share devotionals, Bible studies, testimonials. The rest of the session is devoted to the mentors and the mentees breaking into one-on-ones. And this is where the real power is the relationship building, in one-on-one, the one-on-one pairing. And then resident participants are required to develop long-term and short-term personal goals during the program. And so the interaction between the resident participant and their mentor centers on encouraging the resident participant in developing and achieving these goals. And most of the men and women in our prisons, they don't know how to develop long-term and short-term goals. And even if they did, they don't have anyone to encourage them in achieving them. And so this goals worksheet, on this next slide here, this goals worksheet keeps the conversation between the mentor and the mentee centered and focused. When we kick the program off, the first session, I'm always there to kick the program off. And I tell the mentors in front of the mentees is that this is not an adopted child. So we're not here to talk about things about, my case manager won't do this for me, and the officer took my radio, and the doctor won't do anything about my foot. That's not what we're doing here. We have staff to take care of those issues. These sessions are designed to talk through the mentee and try to help them get to where they're trying to go. And so we're just asking the mentor during these sessions to just be the great listeners, encouragers, and to share godly wisdom throughout the session. So that's a picture of the actual worksheet that the mentees, the mentors and the mentees work through the 6-month program. And so at the end of the formal 6-month program, and upon mutual agreement between the mentor and the mentee, the mentor can apply to be placed on the mentee's visitor list as a reentry mentor of record. So we have a provision and policy that allows each of our residents to have a reentry mentor of record on their visitor list. So they can have their immediate family, they can have an attorney of record, and they can have a clergy of record, as we covered, but they can also have a reentry mentor of record, and so on their visiting list. And so when I put the program together, I built it around that provision of policy, and this allows them to continue the relationship after the formal 6-month program is over. And so essentially now, once the mentor is approved to be the mentor of record on their visiting list, they can continue through the visitation process, and they can actually come in and visit just as any other visitor can, and they have all the rights and privileges that any other visitor will have on their approved visiting list. So, and I'm really pleased to report that that God has really blessed the Life Builders program, has expanded it. We have it in most of our prisons, everywhere that we house women at, in our institutions. We have Life Builders programs. And so it's just been a blessing to watch. And I'm also excited that the West Ohio Conference, the United Methodist Church, has been very active in our Life Builders faith-based mentoring program. We have some brothers from the Lima, Gilboa area that have gone in and actually done a Life Builders 6-month cycle at the Allen Correctional Institution. Next week, I'll be going to Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, and we have some sisters from Lima, from the United Methodist Church, from the Lima and Gilboa areas that are doing a Life Builders group, and they're going to graduate next week. And so I'm just excited about that. And I'm also in the process of making plans to kick off a group of women from the West Ohio Conference, from Westwood United Methodist Church in Cincinnati, very soon. And they're going to be going in and doing a 6-month Life Builders program at the Dayton Correctional Institution. So historically, statewide, we have over 230 mentors and mentees, past and present. And in that number, several of those mentors have participated in multiple groups. So they've gone in, mentored, and said, "Hey, we'd like to go in and do it again." It was so impactful. At the end of the 6-month program, we have a graduation ceremony, and I actually pass out certificates. I give the mentor a certificate of appreciation, and mentee a certificate of completion, and just to hear the testimonies of the men and women at those graduation ceremonies, just talking about the impact that the program has made. I always hear from the mentors that, hey, I got more out of this than he or she got. I learned more from them than they could have ever learned from me. And then, of course, the mentee is saying, I appreciate him, them saying that, but I don't know how they could have gotten more out of this for me, considering they left their families twice a month for 6 months to come in and spend time with me. And so it has just been absolutely phenomenal. It's been a blessing to be a part of putting it together, but even more of a blessing to see that the lives have changed and what God is doing through men and women from the faith community to come in and deeply impact and develop relationships with our men and women as they transition back home, or even if they're going to be doing a life sentence. They have a friend, they have somebody to walk with them, and to know that somebody cares about them and somebody's praying for them makes all the difference. And so That would be the end of my presentation.